it was very interesting to, when I was first going to share this experience, and now having heard Kevin's experience or having read his experience about what he was going through with these facing of the multiple parts of ourselves, these different aspects that we created in the realms here of creation. And I had a very similar experience to the first part, where I found myself in this giant building. It kind of looked like a church, but I wasn't all the way inside. I was sort of looking in through a window, or like an open doorway. And I was watching the person who was standing on the stage talking to all the people, and they weren't sitting down, they were standing up. And when he was talking to them, at first it looked like a normal man. Everything looked, how you say, normal, kind of nothing um, malign happening, or how you say. But as he kept speaking to them, all of a sudden he turned into what looked like a complete shadow. He looked completely, his whole outline and all his skin and everything turned completely black like smoke. And all of a sudden, out of his body and out of his face, sort of like from this void that he became, came all these black tentacles, and they were punching each person like a hole punch would punch holes in paper. It was punching each person there. I mean, there was multiple tentacles, but it was hitting every person like a hole punch, and it was punching holes through them. At first, it would hit them in the heart, then it would hit them in their forehead area, and then it would hit like different parts of their body, maybe their knees and other things, but it would go primarily for the heart and the head areas of each individual person. And I knew that this was because of the kind of speech he was giving, or what he was relating to, that these people were, again, agreeing to, and of course they were there within the building, so on and so forth. And I'm watching all of this take place. And all of a sudden, I had this very strong impression. It was like from my right-hand side, it was like another window had opened up, this view opened up, and I could see this being coming from, sort of, you might say, like way off. It was almost like somewhere in the distance, at least that was my impression. It was just somewhere else. He was coming from somewhere else, from a realm of a very similar nature to whatever this individual who was preaching to these masses was from. And the individual that was coming from the view on my right-hand side was coming to destroy this person, even though he himself was something of a, I guess you could say, like a negative influence. So it was like these two, you might say, baddies facing off against each other, these two people with this conflict going on. But as the being on my right-hand side came closer, his form became very clear to me. And what it looked like, visually speaking, was a large tree, but like a dead one, not like an alive one that has lost all of its leaves and turns hollow because it starts to rot and so on. It was very wide. This body type was very, very wide, and the top branches were very twisted. And if any of you, I'm sure many of you, or all of you rather, have seen the Lord of the Ring and seen the Lord Saruman, how it's like kind of looks like a reptilian eye. It's kind of got that slit in the center. And this individual that had this twisted body type, he was carrying a staff with him that had the very same kind of like Saruman's eye, except it wasn't glowing red and yellow. It was just black, just like black smoke. And the tree itself had these little slits that were like smoke, and they were like eyes, but they kind of looked like snake eyes because they were in that slit kind of fashion. And it was very interesting because I watched this tree-like being enter in through this doorway on the right-hand side to go into the building where the man was preaching to the masses to go and destroy him. I was seeing this, watching it take place. But as soon as this being passed by me, he froze, like he had detected me, or he had picked up that I was there, or that I could see him. And that was the point of him coming, is that he knew that he was taking this person by surprise, and it was it's like I was interfering. And all of a sudden he turned to face me, and he was holding this, and this is where I saw the details of the staff and everything else, and because he had turned to face me, and he put out his right hand, this little tree-like or like a twig-like hand, because it was all made of wood and like that. And when he put out his hand, his right hand, I felt this crushing pressure. It was like, it reminded me of being and now I've never been this deep underwater to where you feel the crushing pressure, but that was my impression. It was something like being very, very deep underwater, like being at the bottom of the ocean, and how that pressure could crush steel things and so on. And that was the pressure that I was feeling. That was what he was exacting. And I remember I felt, I will admit, I felt very, very scared. I had this very mortified feeling, like I wanted to run away. And because the pressure was increasing, and it made me feel like I had this sensation like my chest was collapsing, not just in the other realms or my other body, but the physical body, like something like that. And all of a sudden, as I'm staring at him, and I'm going through this experience, he's trying to have this effect on me, or having this effect on me. This very calm voice, from my right hand side comes in, and it says, "You need to face that fear." And I didn't say anything, but it was like a silent agreement that I made, or rather a decision that I had made to face that fear. And so even though I was completely terrified, I was completely mortified, and that's why I said it really reminded me of Kevin's experience, because he had mentioned that the the beings that he was with, whoever they were respectively, were facing these creations of theirs that were sort of like beyond them, you might say. Not necessarily beyond them, but they felt like, or they had this idea that they couldn't deal with them. But that was the point, is they were supposed to learn how to. And so I felt like, I see that I was going through something very similar, in that I didn't know how to deal with the situation at first, because it was scary and it was something different. But I made this decision to face that fear. And when I started facing this fear, I got this view sort of like out of my body. I was looking at the physical body laying in the bed, and I was kind of like shaking. And all of a sudden I started crying. And when I had gotten up, I had tears on my face because I was so afraid. But that facing it, and I remember when I was looking at it, it threw in its slit eyes, and I was facing it. It knew, or rather, it recognized that I was not scared of it, that my decision to face it had completely taken away any of its ability to affect me. And at that moment that I made that decision to face it completely, regardless of the experience that I was having to stand in that position, it completely dissolved. And after that, I had gotten up, or no, excuse me, no, there was a little bit now, because I was trying to remember. So after it had completely dissolved, the whole scene vanished. Everything had vanished. The building, the floor beneath me, what I recognized as the setting, or seen as the setting, it completely dissolved. And I was shown a map of the United States, kind of, Florida, Texas, California, all these different parts, just the entire map of the United States. And it was like a regular map outlining all the different states, but it turned completely black with black ink. And it was like it started to flood with black ink. And I don't know, or rather, it seemed unrelated to what was said to me next, because as I'm watching this take place visually, this map turn into black ink, I could see, I want to say it was Rebazar, but it was one of the boys came in again on my right-hand side, and he said, it's so funny, I wanted to say what he said, and I completely forgot. It's like I blanked out, but the idea was that because I had faced it, I had become, you might say, something like stronger, that situation was created for me to see if I was really going to face it. It was sort of like a test. And I had this very strong recognition. It was like I want to say, like, I don't want to say like graduated, but it kind of reminded me of something like that. It was something like that I had become a stronger individual in my being, not just in my personal self, but in my being. I was standing more firmly, and I recognized very clearly because you can be told that nothing can hurt you, of course, things like that. You know, we look at the idea that we are awareness, we try to recognize that, and that nothing can really hurt us because we're not the body, we are the awareness just operating the bodies. But in that moment that it was said to me and that I had that experience of facing this individual, it became more clear than ever that truly nothing can ever hurt me. And it was more so than just the idea of being attacked, of being this and that. It's hard to put into words because it was more of a recognition. It was very clear, but just like that basic idea that nothing can have that effect on you if you're standing in that position ready to face it. And so I think I'll end it there because maybe I'll end up dragging it on. But that was the basic idea I wanted to share with everybody. Thought it was interesting. So thank you for listening.
Terrific, Jeremy. Did you write all that out? You get to write all that out. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'll write it out right now. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yeah, have fun with it and just add whatever. Make it as long as you want. I see it as very important, yes, because these are so many of the unknown factors that we don't know about in the personal self, not at all. And so this helps people, start to imagine something else, because the intuitive part of ourself and the imagination, that's actually the real you. That's all part of that. That's why we have that, you can call them faculties, but it's more than that. It's just the real awareness. And then we're operating these 5 bodies with our awareness. So those aspects that we call imagination and intuitiveness and whatever, well, that all applies to the real awareness. It's just utilizing whatever we have here to recognize that real awareness and what's taking place and what's going on, etc., with all life, and why we're here, and having the real purpose of, just doing what life does. In other words, helping itself continually wake up. And this is the process that we're going through and everybody else. So it's a continual wake up to become more aware, which is so cool. So these are the first steps. They're very important, like baby steps. And so we use the literal part of ourselves. And then this is why I've created the intuitive senses, the intuitive seeing, because people are familiar with that, but they don't quite know completely what it is. But people have been controlled and programmed and agreed to be locked into a literal world of asking questions and getting answers and thinking that they've got something when they really don't. They need the experience too, and it takes a lot. So what you're doing, you and others, we all become the great witnesses to something else besides this restricting consciousness we're in here. Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Cool.